is not a liberal America and a conservative America.
We are not as divided as our politics suggests.
There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America.
We remain more than a collection of red states and blue states. We are and forever will be the United States of America.
We want you to disperse.
We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
It's entirely legitimate to look at the Tea Party. I mean, here are a group of people who are admittedly racist.
Carrying swastikas.
I look at Obama as a perfect American. I don't know what they're so afraid of him for, except he happens to be black.
Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute.
You have awakened the sleeping giant.
The time has come to pass comprehensive immigration reform.
The first big step is you have to have a serious border security.
So is America a divided nation? Welcome to this live studio audience edition of Hannity. Now tonight for the entire hour we'll be tackling the most controversial issues facing the country, from race relations to Obamacare, immigration and much more. No topic tonight is off limits because, as we've seen in the wake of the Zimmerman verdict and even following the 2012 presidential election, there is a great divide that exists here in America today, and it's time to explore why. Now, in a few minutes, Utah Senator, Tea Party favorite Mike Lee will join us from Washington. He's going to tackle the sensitive issue of health care, and then a liberal and conservative collide when Juan Williams will square off with former Florida Congressman Colonel Allen West on the topic of race. But before we get to all of that, it's time to welcome in our brilliant studio audience who will be here for the next 60 minutes. Good to see you all. Welcome. All right, scale of 1 to 10, shout out numbers. How divided is America? 10 being the most divided.
8.
8, absolutely.
8. Anyone say 10? 10. Noel, why 10? Why?
You know, the reason I say 10 is because I think Barack Obama, when he got to be president, immediately started on class warfare and then immediately started with pitted the races. And I know Jamu's shaking your head, but it's true. We are more divided. Our nation is more divided ever since he took president. I think it's one of the worst things that's ever happened. And I feel that within people. I deal with donors, and I feel that with money. I feel that with race. I feel that in every aspect that we can. I think Obamacare, I think everything that he has done nothing but divide us as a nation.
All right, more numbers. What do we got? Tom? 9.
It's off the charts.
Off the charts. Higher than 10,
No.
if possible?
And I agree with Nicole. Obama should be
Noel.
a leader. I'm sorry. More of playing a role of the leader. And unfortunately, I really don't think that he's doing that. He has injected the race card, the child welfare card, the grandma card, anything to push his big government agenda, because he believes more in big government than in the power of the individual.
That's the fundamental difference. The fundamental difference is Obama brought in huge government programs, and he's facing resistance for those of us who believe in individual liberty.
Isn't that what it comes down to? Statists want big government, conservatives want limited
That's
government.
what the polarization
Is
about.
it that fundamental?
No, it isn't, Sean.
It isn't.
We're
right.
all one America. You can have different views and disagree politely. Bill Clinton brought America together. Republicans like Ronald Reagan did. President,
but hang on.
we are one America.
Doug, you just said 8 out of 10 were divided.
We are. The president and both parties have divided this country, but it doesn't have to be. Sean, we are the greatest nation on earth, and we're not a people that lack common values.
There might be some truth. All right, let me ask the next one. How many on a scale of 1 to 10 blame Republicans for the divide? I know 10 out of you. All right, Jamu's a 10. Keisha, yeah, in the back. What?
I don't think we can blame Republicans. I don't think we can blame liberals. I don't think we can blame our president. I think that he represents the majority, and the government is supposed to be for the people, not individuals.
He sets the tone. The president sets the tone. You dial this back to Obamacare, which was a huge government expansion. The president said, if you don't agree with me, you're misinforming people. That was creating a fear and a divide right there. If you don't agree with me, you're misinforming people.
So is this government?
But Sean, the issue here is we've got a president who's acting very unpresidential. He needs to stop playing Barney Fife and cherry picking these little local crime stories, and he needs to focus on the big issues of the day. Stop dividing us, President Obama.
Jennifer Stefano is a Tea Party member. Jennifer.
And I believe the nation's divided. It's about a 3 because I don't really believe we as Americans are that divided. What I believe is that some presidents bring out the worst in us. Lyndon Johnson is one that comes immediately to mind. Richard Nixon, another one, and Barack Obama takes the cake. They bring out the worst in us.
We are divided. We are divided.
We're divided
Today,
in this room.
Look,
Okay, yeah.
I agree. Today we're at a heightened stance of divide because of this Zimmerman verdict. And what I just saw there is unbelievable to me. Barack Obama, in a great political speech, and he's a terrific orator, and he could, rebel rouse with the best. I mean, that was a great speech talking about we're all one America. The speeches he's given on the heels of this verdict have been the polar opposite of what I've seen there. He's talking about this being a racially profiled. He actually opined, the president of this country said this jury's verdict was wrong, which is outrageous to me. Outrageous. Yes, he did. He said there was a racial profiling incident.
Jamu.
Look, as much as I love all of the folks in this audience, they are living outside of reality. This country has been divided.
So everybody here is outside of your reality. Okay.
This country has been more divided at other times. We have to understand that our media has been democratized. Everything, all of the controversy, all of the division is actually taking place in high division. Billions of pixels of the hate and opinions and people who have a platform who never
Florida
did before.
Is an apartheid
No. But that's the change from when we had Bill Clinton as president, when Ronald Reagan was president.
Let me give you an example.
It's not that we're more divided, it's that we all have platforms in which to express
when the
our
president
division.
say Republicans want dirty air and water, and that's not their plan, or they want kids with autism, Down syndrome, and the elderly to fend for themselves. Big election issue. Is that divisive?
Well,
is that divisive?
Sean, what has been divisive with Republicans is that for the first time, Republicans have gone into Congress and said, we are not going to govern. We get paid to come into this building, this beautiful Capitol, the history of our democracy, and we are not going to govern.
I'm going to ask the question
We're the party of no, and that has never been done in our history before.
When the president says that Republicans want kids with autism and Down syndrome and the elderly to fend for themselves, I asked if he was divisive, and you lectured me about Congress.
Sean, I'm a Democrat.
Congress hasn't done anything.
Divisive?
Congress refused to legislate. All they do is say no to this
You're talking
president.
about Congress,
and
yes
Congress
or no?
has never, in the history of
You won't
America,
answer.
done
Doug
that.
Shulman,
The
Democrat.
Senate has
Look,
never.
I'm a Democrat. He is divisive. It is very, very sad that he's not acting to unify the country. Lyndon Johnson passed the Civil Rights Bill. Come on, don't call him a bad person. We need people like that with big ideas and want to bring the country together.
There is a fundamental divide in this country. There are people who are fighting to restore constitutional principles, and there are people that are fighting to expand the role of government beyond its means. We have to recognize that. So there is a fight going on right now between those two sides.
Let me agree with what Jedediah is saying here. Either you believe in bigger government, or see, I don't think this can be reconciled, or limited government. Jason.
It's not divided government per se that I think is the problem. It's the racial division. And again, I think the president sets the tone. He started at the top. And what's sad is that this president has not hesitated to divide the country by race when it suits his political needs, whether it's the calling voter ID laws racist or throwbacks to Jim Crow, whether it's using his administration to support racial admissions in college campuses and so forth. When it suits his purposes, he will divide the country by race. And Trayvon Martin was just the latest example of that.
Okay, yeah, back here. Go ahead.
I think that bigger than a racial division, we have a generational gap. The people that are in position of power right now are what? Boomers. And then you have the millennials who are highly diverse. Almost 50% of them are multicultural in nature who think differently. I think it's going to take another generation to take positions of authority and power and representation for us to really get into a united America.
I worry, though.
We're not there yet, but the future and the changing face of America and the trends show it already.
All right, Lois, hang on. Kerry Pickett, Lois, a.k.a. Lois Lane.
Thank you very much. No, actually, you have to remember, this president, even before he got into office, he was actually pushing a lot of the racial divide. He did to Hillary Clinton. He pretty much accused her of being a racist during the primaries. Then when he got into office, what happened there? Skip Gate, remember him? He was the professor over at Harvard, and he had to have a big beer summit to actually try and
Stupidly.
ended up actually clean that up. I mean, honestly, we really have to think about how this president has ended up using the whole like racism issue to try and also make look Tea Partiers as racist during the 2010.
All right, Basil. Let's get to Basil. He's a Democrat. We got equal
time. I find it amazing that we have conveniently skipped over all of the Bush-Cheney years. Did Bush Cheney and Karl Rove as the enforcer not divide this country? And we talk about big government versus small government. How many of us are now benefiting from the fact that this president got the unemployment rate from over 10% down to under 8? We should all be thankful for that. We should all be thankful for that.
Talking about healthcare. Talking about healthcare.
We're going to get into that.
President Bush talked to me about personal responsibility for healthcare, fitness, exercise, cutting down on healthcare costs. Obamacare, by contrast, divisive, extending an entitlement. Let's take care of you. You'll get sick. Tremendous healthcare costs. We'll all take care of you. But what is it going to cost?
All right. Let me,
not as much as
last word. Yeah, we have. I think we got everybody in.
Managed to pass major social legislation with bipartisan support, whether it was President Bush with No Child Left Behind, Medicare Part D, President Clinton with welfare reform. President Obama came into office with a kind of rhetoric that he was a uniter, but then he just rammed partisan legislation through Congress. That tone's been there since then.
Healthcare was rammed down our throat. All right. All right, guys, stay right there. We're now going to turn to. And we're going to get back to our audience in just a minute. But first, I want to bring in Utah Senator Mike Lee. He's threatening to, well, not really shut down the federal government, but unless Obamacare is defunded, you're saying we're going to defund Obamacare. How's that going over, Senator?
Well, it's going well in the sense that the American people are overwhelmingly in support of it. The American people don't like this law. Congress never read the law before it was passed. The Supreme Court amended it not once but twice, and now President Obama has done exactly the same thing, amending it twice without any constitutional authority to do that. He's exempted out his big corporate cronies from the employer mandate. Meanwhile, he's told hardworking individual Americans they have to comply with the law's exacting commands or else they'll be fined severely under federal law. The point is the president's now told us he's not going to follow this law. And if he's not going to follow it, the American people shouldn't be required to fund it. So a few of us in Congress are saying, look, we're not going to fund Obamacare. You can criticize us all you want, but we're not going to pass a continuing resolution or other appropriations measure that includes funding for ongoing further enforcement and implementation of Obamacare.
Now, Congress has the authority of the purse, so you are encouraging the House and the Senate to fund everything else, Medicare, Social Security, the military, every other function of government but Obamacare. How is the support, or is there a great divide on that issue?
Yes, there's a significant divide even within the party so far. But this is where the party is going to be changing. It's going to be changing because the calls from the American people are overwhelming on this, Sean. They don't want this law to kick in. And they understand that once this law kicks in, it'll be much harder for us to get out of it. A lot of us as Republicans were elected just a few years ago with a mandate to stop this horrible law. And now people are starting to understand that you're either with Obamacare or you're against it. If you're with it, then you'll be fine voting for a CR that funds Obamacare. If you're against it, you must commit to vote against any CR that contains Obamacare funding.
So you're saying to the Republicans, rather than symbolic votes to eliminate Obamacare and remove it as law in the land, they could use their constitutional authority to defund Obamacare and fund the rest of the government. It seems to me that is the only way out. And are you saying this is the last opportunity we have?
Yes, this is the last stop on the Obamacare Express. Before this law kicks in full force on January 1st, 2014, we've got one last shot, and that shot will occur when this current continuing resolution expires September 30th. We've got to pass another one to keep the government funded. Now, some in the liberal media have mischaracterized this as a promise to shut down the government. We don't want that. We don't need it. We can avoid it. We will avoid it. We want to keep everything funded in the government, everything except Obamacare. Now, if Harry Reid wants to force that, that would be unfortunate. But Harry Reid, I don't think, is not going to force a government shutdown simply because he wants to defend a law that is itself indefensible, a law that the president said is not ready to be implemented, and a law that the Senate author of Obamacare has described himself as a train wreck waiting to happen.
That's Max Bonkers. Well, and it's also causing business not to hire full-time workers. Last question. We're discussing with our audience tonight the issue of division in the country. We see a lot of this in Washington. You've been there a while. How divided is it in D.C.?
You know, D.C. is pretty divided. There's a lot of talk about how divided D.C. is on the news. What people sometimes overlook is that there are a lot of areas where we actually agree. Sometimes there are areas where we agree too often. The bigger division that I see, Sean, is the division that's taking place between the political governing class in Washington of either political party on the one hand and the American people on the other. When we put forward big new programs like Obamacare, that divides America, and that's bad. We've got to not fund it.
All right, Senator Mike Lee, thanks so much for being with us. Coming up, we're going to have a lot more with our studio audience in just a few minutes. But first, the hot topic of race relations in America is front and center when Juan Williams will debate Colonel Allen West. That's next. Plus, breaking news involving former Congressman Anthony Weiner, candidate for mayor in New York. Brand new lewd photos and messages have emerged, and the New York City mayoral candidate has officially apologized yet again. Our audience will react to that and much more tonight on this edition of Hannity. And welcome back to this live audience edition of Hannity. Now, ever since George Zimmerman was acquitted, there has been a rise in racial tension all across America and an ongoing discussion about the division in America. Now, just yesterday, former President Jimmy Carter was asked a controversial question on that topic at an event in D.C. Let's take a look.
We have a domestic issue receiving international attention. Do you think that we have a form of two states and/or apartheid in the United States?
No, we don't have two states in the United States. We do have separation between red and blue states and a polarization of the constituency brought about, in my opinion, primarily by the massive infusion of money, most of which is spent on negative advertisements that create divisions among the population who has to watch television and also the two parties, and it carries over to Washington. The thing about which I'm most concerned, though, is the growing separation in America between the richest Americans and the poorest Americans, and also a basic negative attitude toward people who are different from us.
All right, here with reaction, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams and Fox News contributor Colonel Allen West is with us. Colonel, demographically, we always break down demographics in elections. You have the black America votes 96% Democratic. You see high-profile cases, O.J. Simpson, more recently the Zimmerman case. Very different reactions along racial lines. Why do you think that is, sir?
Well, first of all, I want to say that when you start talking about the word apartheid, that comes from the Afrikaner language, and that means apartness, and that's a rigid system of segregation based upon race. So I think that the question that was asked was totally, uncalled for when you look at America. But I think that once again, you have a push by certain individuals within the black community to try to keep, this stoking of racial division. And also you have a media that chimes in with the sensationalism of that, and we definitely saw that in the Zimmerman case. We definitely saw that during the O.J. Simpson case or the Rodney King case. But then you have so many other, horrible events, such as what just happened in Chicago over the weekend. We know about the murders there. We have the incident down in Brunswick, Georgia, where two black teenagers, 17 and 15, shot a 13-month-old white baby in the face with a .22 caliber pistol right in front of the mother. But you don't hear any type of media attention. You don't hear any type of leaders in the black community talking about that. So I think it's an instance of cherry-picking the type of issues or the type of stories that people believe will keep this type of separation. And I always go back to this incredible quote by Booker T. Washington in 1911 that talked about this industry of racial divisiveness.
What about that, Juan? Electorally, the high-profile cases, you just heard, we hear about some cases, not the Georgia case that Colonel West mentioned. Why is that?
Well, I think that there is an increased level of corrosiveness. I mean, I just thought the whole Zimmerman-Martin trial led to a higher level of distrust between people in this country, especially.
Why are the racists seeing the same case so differently?
Well, I saw a poll today. It said, it's not only a division between black and white, Sean, but it said that overwhelmingly among whites, there's division. That if you look at white Republicans, it was like 70% of white Republicans sided with the verdict and with Zimmerman. And then among white Democrats, you had almost the opposite number. Only 30% of white Democrats thought it was a just verdict. So, and you look at that, I would say also, it's interesting to me, you were asking Colonel West earlier about Washington. It seems to me that if you look at the Republican Party in Washington over an issue like immigration reform, you see a tremendous divide within the party. And you see the loudest voices, the voices that I think get the most attention and therefore have most access to fundraising, saying the most obnoxious things. They
What about
generate
you're
all
a big
the
Obama
activity.
supporter? I mean, the Cambridge police acted stupidly. Trayvon would have looked like my son. I could have been Trayvon 35 years ago. Does he bear any blame in any of this divide, Juan?
Well, the divide I was talking about was among Republicans, so I don't know. I think
that's
they've
not the question I asked.
obstructed it. Right, but you're asking about which divide, Sean?
Well, I'm asking about the president. When he said, the president of the United States gets involved in cases.
You mean the racial divide?
Well,
Is that what you
the
mean?
president, when he says the Cambridge police acted stupidly, knew nothing about the case. Trayvon would have looked like my son. Is he getting involved?
Well, I would take them apart. I don't think that he understood what had fully taken place in the Gate situation, and I think he spoke, prematurely. I think in the situation involving Trayvon Martin, not only was he black, but I think that the president later said, he was Trayvon Martin 35 years ago.
But there was no race in this case, Colonel.
That's not true. Let me just tell you, we have been talking about this case in racial terms from the start. And in fact, the reason it got so much attention was that the police chose not to arrest Zimmerman, and there was no
That's not why. They didn't have the evidence. Colonel, can you name any evidence in the case that had any racial indication? Because there's a mountain of evidence supporting George Zimmerman not being a racist. Colonel West.
Well, first of all, I'll go back to the FBI investigation, which was reported in the Miami Herald down in South Florida, that there was no evidence shown that would prove any animus of racial hatred there with George Zimmerman. But I'd like to go back to the point that we were just talking about with the immigration legislation. A couple of weeks ago, there was an organization, the Black American Leadership Alliance. The head of that organization is Leah Durant. She's a Democrat. She's a progressive. But she realizes the detrimental effect that immigration law, S744, as passed out of the Senate, would have on the black community. And there you had Tea Party groups with Leah Durant and many other black Democrats. You had libertarians, conservatives, the entire spectrum that came together to talk about the detrimental effect that legislation would have on the black community, on American workers overall. But you didn't hear anything about that once again in the media. So when you have those instances where we are coming together as Americans on, across the ideological divide, that's not what sells in the media.
But let me ask this, because this is a great point you're bringing up. We don't hear the names of black children killed in Chicago. We don't examine fully as a country. We've never given the attention like we did to the Zimmerman case for the failure in the economy, where half the black kids can't get summer jobs, or the failure of our school system, Juan. We don't talk about that. The civil rights leaders, they're not involved in asking those questions. It seems not to advance whatever agenda they have.
I agree with you on this. I mean, I think it's an outrage, I mean, to me, you've got to start talking about the problems within the community and areas where, in the black and Hispanic community, we can help ourselves, Sean. And I think you start there in terms of, saying, hey, what's wrong with these schools, and why is it that the status quo is defended by these teachers unions? It just drives me nuts. Or you start talking about, okay, so maybe the media doesn't pay attention when a black kid gets shot by another black kid, but my God, it's carnage, and it's going on all the time, and we should speak to it and condemn it.
We don't know the names
Drug
of any
use
of
in
those
the black
kids.
community,
I have a
acceptance
list.
of crime. What about these gangster rappers? Why doesn't someone tell them that they are corrupting our kids? Why don't they scream about it from the highest roof?
Yeah, good. That's a good point. I mean, and I think that's because it doesn't fit their agenda. Last word, Colonel West. We'll let you weigh in on this.
Well, once again, Booker T. Washington had a three-pronged attack. It was education, entrepreneurship, and self-reliance. And when you look at our inner cities, you look at Detroit, it's an absolute failure. It starts with education. That helps to bring up entrepreneurship, and that creates self-reliance. We're moving toward a dependency society, and we got to stop it.
Guys, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
America Divided. When we return, it's back to our live studio audience as they react to the stunning developments out of New York City. More X-rated photos, more pictures of Anthony Weiner have emerged. Will this derail his political comeback? And should it matter what politicians do in their personal lives? That and much more as this special edition of Hannity continues.
I have said that other texts and photos were likely to come out, and today they have. As I've said in the past, these things that I did were wrong and hurtful to my wife and caused us to go through many challenges in our marriage that extended past my resignation from Congress. While some of the things that have been posted today are true and some are not, there is no question that what I did was wrong.
Anthony Weiner is back. There he is, admitting once again, yes, he's been involved in the internet. Kirsten, former Miss America.
Yes.
Do values matter in our politicians? I mean, have our standards been lowered?
I think that they have, but also you have to look in the history of this country. Americans have been very quick to forgive their political leaders for sexual indiscretions with JFK and Lyndon B. Johnson and obviously Bill Clinton and now with Anthony Weiner. I mean, Mark Sanford in South Carolina just got, elected to public office. So we've tended to be very forgiving. But, where my heart lies is with these girls that, that he conducted these, relationships, digital relationships
one
with,
went
and
on
his
6
wife.
months. She had to be a willing participant. You can block somebody on Twitter, right?
Absolutely. And, who knows what her motivations are? We don't know. But I would love for the American public to hold our leaders to a higher standard and say it's not just how you govern, but your character. And I think that it would be wise for us to try to elect
How many think
leaders
that this should be career ending? Spitzer? 100%. 100%. How many don't think it should be career ending? The two Democrats. Interesting. John, yeah.
Shocking. Anthony Weiner said, I told you more of this stuff was coming out. Well, if there's no shame attached to it, if there's nothing wrong with it, why didn't he tell us then? Why did he wait for the media to report it?
But this went on this went into the summer.
I talk about he was warning us that more was coming. Here's the bottom line.
The scary part about this one, I'm sorry.
Let me finish. Two things. Yes, people are more forgiving, but there's a reason why we all should worry about characters like this and their behavior. Why? That is, they're subject to blackmail.
I agree with you.
Spitzer, Clinton, whatever you think about their behavior. Under Bill Clinton, 2 foreign governments taped his conversation with Monica Lewinsky. That's incontrovertible. It was in the Starr report. It was never disputed. We don't want a president, a governor, a mayor subject to blackmail.
That's a great point. The other great point is the part that's scary to me. I'd love for someone to explain how this doesn't affect his judgment, his ability to serve and judge. He did this. Wait. He did this after he got caught. Yeah. He did it again. Well, he got caught. He got expelled and he did it again. So that's someone who has no control.
Why is it silly?
It's silly because we want public officials to govern, to deal with fiscal crises, to bring the country together, not to explain and parse words about ridiculous behavior.
Noel.
Look. First of all, I need to disclose that I worked for Rudy Giuliani. Second of all, I'm supporting Joe Lhota. So I need to tell you this: we should.
He's the Republican running for mayor.
He's the Republican running for mayor. Right. But I need to disclose to you that Anthony Weiner is doing us all a disservice by running for the highest mayor's office in New York. It is a privilege to be the mayor of New York. And let me tell you something. He could have done good in another way. He could have started a PAC. He could have helped other people run. But no, he is so narcissistic. This is narcissism at its highest
All right,
level.
real quick, Democratic response. Yeah.
Listen. The voters will decide. He could run. He could do whatever he wants to do. The voters will actually. The voters will actually decide. And if those personal, and if the personal issues matter to voters, they will not vote for him. It's just that simple.
As a physician, I want to tell you this kind of behavior is not only going to be contained. It will definitely carry over
into his professional
life. I'm not a psychiatrist. There's no question about it that this will impair his judgment beyond just.
I know you want to get in. Anyone else want to get in? And we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue straight ahead. And welcome back to the special studio audience edition of Hannity. All right, Jamu, you want to talk about Anthony Weiner and Elliot Spitzer and all these politicians?
I do want to talk about Elliot Spitzer because he was actually prosecuting sex workers as he was employing one. But we do. That's awful. It's awful. Yeah. We do deserve better from our elected leaders. We deserve elected leaders who aren't going to try to legislate our private lives, legislate women's bodies as they're out being freaks of the industry. So I think there are differences. When it was so hard to watch my friend Uma stand up there, her lip was quivering, stand by her man. They have worked it out in their marriage. But the Republicans who then try to legislate women's bodies and at the same time are being dirty
it's really
behind
simple.
the sheets.
Anthony Weiner, when you talk about Anthony Weiner, he's a liar. It's really simple. He lied to his wife. He lied to the American people repeatedly. He's a liar. He should not be able to get away with that. He has been given too many chances. If he's going to lie about this, what else is he going to lie about? Is this a guy that we want talking to us, lecturing us now about Obamacare? A guy who lied about about this? What does it say about the people who vote for him?
honesty should matter.
It says that it'll be easier for him to get elected.
For someone like this, they obviously don't have morals as a high priority. And I think once you hold yourself out as a public figure, you need to really look at and think about the decisions you make. And the fact that he's repeating it, it says to me something's wrong.
And can I just say one thing? You know, I'm so tired of hearing like, oh, I feel bad for these women. Hey, you know what? It's 2013, ladies. Get out from behind your man. What is wrong with these women? I don't feel sorry for them one blessed bit.
Well, she made a decision.
This is a life choice you're making. And that's what I'm saying. But let's not like boo-hoo for these women. Like, this is some freakish feminist thing. And let me tell you one more thing. The Wiener thing teaches you one thing. We have to teach our children. And this is how sick the world's become. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't take a camera, stick it down your pants, take a picture, and tweet it out. These are the values now we have to talk to children about. It is pathetic because of guys like Anthony Weiner.
You know what this says about the American people, though? And we know this is a fact. I don't think he's a good example, but the American people want politicians who they believe are human, who are subject to mistakes, subject to failure, who they can relate to. This is not a good example. I mean, I don't think anyone who does what he did should be in office. But that being said, it humanizes him.
Didn't this guy actually go to rehab for his problem? And that was one of the, apparently it didn't work, number one. Number two, we also have to ask here, you know, he'll probably get a temporary bump, believe it or not, from doing this whole presser out here. But I'd like to know whether or not someone in the Democratic primary that he's running against, whether they're the ones to drop the goods today.
One of the problems is that we forget New York is a big, important country, or a big, important city in this country, and it's facing some tough issues. There are union contracts that need to be negotiated. There's the city's debt that we need to be concerned about. None of these issues are being discussed in this race. We don't know anything about what the candidates think about those issues because we're talking about.
We need to send a message out to the rest of America, to our viewers, that New York won't fall for this kind of thing. We don't need Spitzer. We don't need Weiner here. This kind of values we don't need here.
We need women. We need more women running for office because there is a power dynamic. It does matter. There is a difference. Half of the population is left out of our elected leadership, and when we have more women elected to office, we will have less scandals.
Wait, Noel.
The Weiner issue. Where's now?
You run for office to me because I know that you won't get involved in the scandal.
Where is now? We've heard nothing from them.
This is not Democrats and Republicans. This is that the male obsession with narcissism we have to address, and it's a reality.
Why don't you let him?
Why don't you let him? Look, everyone makes mistakes. That is true, and everyone who has been a public figure, I myself and so many of us in here are public figures. We've made mistakes, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some that require a little more investigation than others. And this is a truly concerning issue. And what I think it sheds light on, there's a huge problem with cybersecurity and our children online and the dangers they get into. There was a girl in 2011 who was in high school that engaged in a digital online relationship with Anthony Weiner, and that's a concern. So I think that I don't think that we can just trust this man again. I think that we really need to take a further look into what's been going on.
You know, it's an old saying, fool me once, fool me twice. These people are trying to fool us 3 or 4 times, Spitzer and Weiner.
And it's not about, to respond to Jamu, this isn't about electing more women. This is about electing quality people. Man, woman, I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your race is. People who you can count on to do as they say what they're going to do, go do it, and who aren't going to have these issues in their private life that reflect patterns of life.
Doug, you've done a lot of polling on this, and you talk about the divide in the country, which is where we all started here tonight. But in these elections, these guys with these peccadillos, they seem to get elected.
People are willing to forgive, but they have a larger point, which is to unify the country, to do as Jason suggests, talk about the real problems facing a city, a state, a country, to try to bring people together in a way that solves the problem. Ultimately, the political class divide with ordinary people that Mike Lee spoke about is real. Ordinary people say, get real, deal with what is affecting the country, not this sideshow.
We got last word. Go ahead.
Doug, if we elect more women, we probably will see less of this problem, because if you've noticed, women do not really have a lot of this problem. So I am going to say that for our gender. I am going to say that for our gender.
Stefano, quick.
I totally disagree with this freakish feminist stuff of like, oh, we need more women. Okay, then not you, but like take Sarah. Okay, I love like Jamu wants more women. Then get Sarah Palin, not Nancy Pelosi. I would rather poke my eyes out and have Nancy Pelosi.
We got to take a break.
Clinton
when we come
me.
back, we're going to talk immigration and health care and race relations as we talk about America the divided. Straight ahead on Hannity. And welcome back to the special edition of Hannity. As you can see, we have a beautiful studio audience. All right, race, immigration, healthcare. Healthcare. That wasn't a vote. 3 issues that divide this country. I don't see how you reconcile based on where the discussion is. Tom, go ahead. You start it.
To Mike Lee's credit, why have the Senate vote on it? Now we know what's in Obamacare. Let's see those senators a year before the midterm election, 2014. Let's see them stand up and vote yes or no.
No, I say he's right. Defund it.
Right, that's
John.
Getting some consensus on Obamacare. The Washington Post poll today showed that of the 60% of Democrats who call themselves moderate or conservative, support for Obamacare is now below 50%. The reason why Democrats privately will tell you, and Max Baucus publicly, this is a train wreck, is they know this thing is going to be a disaster. It's actually saving the Democratic Party and health care if they actually didn't implement this on October 1st.
The reason is because Americans are smart, and it's dawning on them that insurance doesn't give them health care, that they're not getting access to doctors, that they're not getting access to treatments, they're having longer and longer waiting lines. That's what the reality is, and it's very unpopular.
All right, Todd starting. Oh, Deneen, go ahead.
The unions are even coming out against Obamacare. Yeah. We know it's a failure.
Hey, Hoffa, of all people, Todd Starnes. Yeah.
Sean, I'm hearing from a lot of my listeners, and they say they're very concerned about this. Their doctors are saying they're not going to be, they're going to have to go find another doctor. Their insurance rates are going up. And by the time it's all said and done, a lot of folks are afraid they're going to have to go to the TSA to get their prostates checked.
Yeah.
When Obamacare first got passed, the McKinsey Institute estimated about 30% of all Americans would lose their insurance. 170 million people in this country have private insurance, and it's already starting to happen. And they're starting to see they're getting pushed off exactly what the president promised against. This has been a failure of the president to deliver on his promise, and it hurts the poor more than anyone.
You know that the president is tremendously concerned when they've delayed the small business exchanges, they delayed the employer mandate, they're delaying checking income under the law. So they are desperate, and you know they're desperate. They're worried the thing is going to collapse on October 1st when it starts to go up and running.
Women are no longer a pre-existing condition just because we're female. Now health insurance companies have to spend at least 80% of our premium dollars on our health services. The people who were not able to get health insurance or were capped at lifetime caps no longer have those issues. I understand this audience hates it and wants the Senate and the Congress to keep voting this down and down. But the hundreds of millions of people in this country, Sean, are benefiting Americans, and they support.
Here's the issue that we have. Obamacare wants to throw a wide net to solve the issue of healthcare in America. I get it. But there's a social issue with the women, the children, the minorities, and access to healthcare that we've talked about that needs to get addressed. But Obamacare may not be the solution to solve that. That needs its own solution. And small businesses, I'm a small business owner.
It has been the solution.
Let me tell you, I'm a small business owner that is terrified and afraid of looking at the consequences of what this could mean.
I'm a New Yorker. My health care costs are going from $1,000 a month to $300.
Can the races come together, which we've been talking a lot about? We'll delve into that. Final question. As America Divided, a special edition of Hannity continues. All right, America Divided, welcome back to our special edition of Hannity. Can we get the country together on race issues? The black community, 94.5% votes Democrat. Why?
Well, I think that there are some historical reasons and support from the Democratic community. But I was telling you, Sean, that when I was a surrogate for Hillary Clinton in 2008, I think my best quote on the trail was that I am voting my race. I am voting the human race.
Has
and
Obama,
we have to start looking at it that it's not about black leaders being responsible for the black communities. It is about all of us being responsible for the American
Is black America
community.
better off with Obama having been president for 5 years?
I think that the president has been hesitant, reluctant to get engaged in specific black policies directed towards the black community.
Okay, got it.
Healthcare lifts up the black community, but he has been reluctant.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I love what you're saying, that we're voting for the race of the human race, right? So I will warn both sides on both parties. You know, Rubio, Martinez, Gonzalez on this side is not going to solve the Latino issues, for example.
All right, you are a small business person.
Absolutely.
You're a Hispanic American.
That's correct.
Why are Republicans having a hard time getting Hispanic votes?
Well, we were just having this conversation. You got to invest in having the conversation with the community.
Is it all about immigration, though?
No, it's not. When you look at the polls, the #1 issue for Hispanics is education, and the next one is healthcare, and the third one is immigration. However, the reason
jobs.
Well, exactly. Well,
the economic crisis in America that no one is addressing. That unites the races. It is not an explicitly racial or divisive question. Nobody's talking about it. That's what we need from our politics.
Go ahead.
Just to answer your first question, why are the majority of African Americans Democrats? I think it's because it's what they're historically taught. Grandparents, parents, great-grandparents. But I think in order to resolve any of our issues, we need to look at what the true problems are. You don't look at black, white, Republican, Democrats.
I think what's happening. I think what's happening right now is the black community is not as monolithic as we used to think it is. There are younger people that are voting more independently because they're better educated.
95% Democrat.
But I think, especially in local elections, when you're talking about state issues like education, same-sex marriage,
are black Americans better off economically, jobs under Obama or not?
Worse off.
I think.
How many say no?
I think for the very
How
reason.
many say yes?
I think we are, and I think for the very reason that I brought up at the beginning, unemployment has gone down under his watch.
Yeah, Jeff Stefano.
Unemployment rate. Black men have a 20%, nearly 20% unemployment rate. Black men without a high school diploma under Barack Obama have a 50% unemployment rate. And they have not done well.
But more black men are getting high school diplomas.
African American boys have a 12% proficiency.
This racial divide, Sean, the people who suffer
We're
from
trying to
this
get
racial
Barack
divide.
Obama to stop his horrible
The ends of the political spectrum are so drastic that the middle, not so much. Nothing gets done, and people have no faith in government.
All right, thank you all. You've been great. That is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. Let not your heart be troubled. Greta's next. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.